Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church and Reverend Dr. Marcus D. Cosby, welcome to our campus. We are honored and we're excited to host today's town hall. And we're grateful that you've chosen to be here. Your presence speaks to the power of informed civic engagement. Today's town hall is an important opportunity for our community to listen, learn, and engage. We pray that this conversation helps you make a well-informed, faithful decision in the upcoming election. So again, welcome. And now welcome Sion Rose, our Mistress of Ceremony.
Good morning, everyone. How y'all doing today? I can't hear you. How y'all doing today? It is so great to be here with you today. It is my honor to be here. My name is Sion Rhodes. I am a former Houston television news journalist, so maybe some of you saw me a time or two on KPRC about 3 years ago. I am now currently working in public service for Harris County alongside Commissioner Leslie Briones, and pleased to be doing that, serving all of you. And I also would be remiss if I did not say that I am a proud daughter of 3rd Ward, Texas, home of the historic 18th Congressional District. And we are so excited to hear this conversation today that will just energize us. And we're going to hear from two people who are the biggest, the brightest, the boldest, and who are leading us into a bigger, brighter future that we all deserve. Is that right? I'm going to introduce our panelists now. This panel will be moderated by Chelsea Edwards. Chelsea Edwards is Daytime's new bestie, you may have heard. She launched her own daytime TV show, Chatting with Chelsea, and it airs on Monday through Friday at 12:30 p.m. on Fox 26 and nationally on Fox Soul. So good for you, girl. A true homegrown talent, Chelsea was born in Houston and raised in Missouri City. She graduated from Hightower High School and Texas Southern University, magna cum laude. Please welcome Chelsea Edwards. Christian Menefee, Harris County's district county attorney, was raised in Texas's 18th congressional district by two military parents who taught him the values of service, hard work, and standing up for what's right. He attended Houston's public schools with the help of a Pell Grant, earning a degree from the University of Texas at San Antonio, and then graduating law school at Washington University in St. Louis. Christian has been engaged in the national legal fight against Trump, challenging the administration's efforts to cut funding for life-saving medical research, denying birthright citizenship to immigrant families. And while others talked about pushing back, Christian built a record of real results. Now, Christian is running for Congress because working people deserve a government that has their back. Trump and his allies are making life harder for everyday Americans, rolling back voting rights, attacking reproductive freedom, and rigging the economy for billionaires. Christian has spent his career fighting back against bullies, and he is ready to do it in Washington. He is doing it with the help of his beautiful and talented wife, Caitlin, their two sons, and their rescue dogs. He is also a member of Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church. Give it up for Christian Menefee. And last but not least, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett has built her career around protecting civil liberties and advancing justice for underrepresented communities. A former public defender, civil rights attorney, and Texas state representative, she has consistently fought for equality, accountability, and meaningful reform. During the 87th Texas legislative session, one of the most conservative in state history, Crockett served as the sole Black freshman and youngest Black lawmaker, filing more bills than any other freshman, leading efforts to pass major criminal justice reforms, and helping to found both the Texas Progressive Caucus and the Texas Caucus on Climate, Energy, and the Environment. Elected to Congress in 2022, she now represents Texas's 30th congressional district, succeeding the late Representative Eddie Bernice Johnson. In Congress, she has served as freshman leadership representative, vice-ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, ranking member of the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Oversight, and co-chair of the Democratic Women's Caucus Communications Task Force. She currently serves on both the House Judiciary and House Oversight Committees. Please help me welcome Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Before I turn things over to Chelsea, I want to make sure you all have a chance to engage in this conversation. You should have received index cards from volunteers. If you do not, please raise your hand. They will happily pass them out. There's also a QR code that you can scan and submit questions as we participate in this conversation. And now, Chelsea, take it away.
Oh, thank you so much for those incredible introductions. Let's hear it for Sion Rhodes. I have to say, welcome back to Houston, Congresswoman. We are so happy to have you back.
It's good to be here.
Yes. Now, I heard you are a fan of Houston music, so I got to come out swinging with a serious question right here. How willing would you be to ride through the streets, loud, slow, banging, in a candy-painted car with swangers to campaign for Christian here?
I'm down.
You did?
We gotta win. We gotta win.
We actually have a South Side competition that we'll be doing later on. We'll sign people up for that.
Okay, make sure she has a slab and everything. Okay. What is it about Christian that pushes you to continue to support him? Because this is not your first time around.
No, it's not. And let me tell you something. Right now, people do not trust most politicians, and I completely understand why. And people are always wondering, like, why is it that you want this? Like, what is your motivation? And I think that's a fair question to ask, and especially at a time like this. But I can tell you that Christian is authentic in who he is. He knows who he is, and he knows whose he is, as well as he is somebody that really believes that he has a greater purpose on his life. And so we need people like that, people that have some sort of moral compass, because we are lacking in that. And people that have a fight. You know, everybody wants to say they a fighter until you get in the ring. And so, it's easy to say it, right? We just saw that Marjorie decided that she ain't, okay. Well, y'all saw what happened with Marjorie. For 1 week on the other side of the president and she out, right? It's real in these streets. And so for me, it is so important, especially as our numbers are so tight in the Congress. I have to know that I don't need to be looking back 20 times and trying to make sure you got this, are we gonna be good? Or because we take some votes, we have to do some things that sometimes are not easy, but they are right. And I have to have someone who I know whenever it comes down to, are you scared or not? He's never scared.
As a journalist, I'm supposed to be neutral. I had to fix my face. My best friend told me, fix your face when Jasmine is talking, because, you make me want to go clocking, girl. Okay. Now, Christian, Jasmine, we know, has created a reputation as a battler. Like, she will go head to head with anybody. She does not care who they are, what position they hold, which means that she is very much in the spotlight. And she has created a lot of enemies, or in the nicest of terms, people who do not wish her well. So how do you feel like you were qualified to take up that cross and join in that battle and be in that same spotlight as well?
Well, I just want to start off by saying I'm so glad that Jasmine Crockett ain't running for the 18th Congressional District. Because, boy, y'all gave it a standing ovation. Whoo, Lord. Runoff would be crazy. Look, Jasmine and I actually met back in 2021. When I had just taken office in the middle of a global pandemic as county attorney, and I went and testified before a House committee. And we were testifying over, I think it was a price gouging bill that I was trying to get in place because so many companies were, during Winter Storm Uri, jacking up the prices of necessities. We're talking gasoline, food, water. You would see a little 16 case of water for $70, $80. That's how they were taking advantage of our community. So I went and testified before then State Representative Crockett, and I made it through testifying before Jasmine Crockett, y'all. I was proud of myself. But the fight that we see right now in Washington, D.C., we've been doing this here in Harris County for the past 4 years. When I first got into office, I made clear that I don't care if you're in the governor's mansion, if you're in the White House, or if you're in a corporate boardroom. If you come for the communities that I care about, you're going to have to see me, whether it be in court, in the bully pulpit, And frankly, we surprised people. When I was just 2 months in office and we filed a lawsuit against the Texas Department of Transportation to try to stop the I-45 expansion because it was going to displace black and brown communities and was going to push flood waters more deeply into those communities and have a host of other environmental issues. We surprised a lot of people when we filed that because it was a $10 billion project and people thought that we were going to let the business community push us around. Or when the state of Texas came out here and tried to get more than 2,000 legally cast ballots thrown out, and they had the weight of the Attorney General's office behind them and the Texas Supreme Court behind them, and we still fought it out in court and made sure that every single vote was restored. People thought that we were going to be scared, we weren't going to have that fight. So I think what prepares me to stand alongside Congresswoman Crockett in Congress and be prepared to take on every single fight and foe that we'll have is the fact that we've been doing this work. We've been doing it right here in Harris County for the past 4 years, and it'll be the exact same in Congress.
All right, so we recently had some breaking news. The Supreme Court just blocked an order that found the new Texas congressional map was likely racially biased. I see your eyes, Jasmine. I see your eyes there. So how does this recent redistricting rule affect our district? What is at stake here? And then also, what changes might we see pending the Supreme Court decision on that? That's for both of you.
Yeah, so I'll go first if that's all right with you, Congresswoman. So we all know what happened here in the state of Texas earlier this year. Donald Trump passed a so-called big, beautiful bill that cut SNAP benefits, that made it more difficult to get access to Medicaid, that cut social programs that are going to impact all of our communities. And he knew that it was going to be severely unpopular with the American public. And so instead of doing what a true public servant does, trying to win the hearts and minds of the people that you serve, he instead tried to get people to redistrict in the middle of a decade so he could steal seats away so that he wouldn't lose a majority in Congress. And the first governor that he called was Greg Abbott here in Texas. And he said, hey, I need you to go and target 5 black and brown districts. They sent a letter from the Department of Justice because they're minority what are called coalition districts. So the governor obliged, the state of Texas through the legislature obliged, and they pushed through a map that just throws our districts into complete chaos. Out in the Dallas area, there are 3 districts that are going to be severely impacted. And here in Houston, they took the 18th congressional district, which is about 75% north of downtown, culturally rich neighborhoods like Acres Homes, parts of Aldine, way up to Humble, and flipped it on its head and turned it so that the new district would be about 75% south of downtown. Very obviously targeted on race. And what happened earlier this week was there's a 3-judge panel in a Voting Rights Act case out in El Paso, which ruled on whether the maps are, in the interim, racial gerrymanders. So 2 of the 3 judges, and the judge who wrote the order was appointed by President Donald Trump. They said this is racist. These maps, there's a likelihood that these maps will be found to violate the Voting Rights Act. So the maps were temporarily paused. And the reason why that's important is because that would mean that for the March 2026 primary, folks would run under the lines as they existed in the 2021 maps. Well, last night, because the case is now before the Supreme Court on what's called the emergency docket, Justice Alito, who is a staunch conservative, issued an administrative stay of that ruling. So what that means is, and he ordered the parties to submit briefing by 5 p.m. on Monday. So all of this is a very legalese way of saying the Supreme Court will weigh in on this in the next couple of weeks. And look, I don't have much faith in this Supreme Court. It is an extreme conservative majority on this court. But we're sitting in the house of God, and I believe in a power that is higher than a Supreme Court. So the last word from the Supreme Court will come in the next couple of weeks. But I've said publicly that I live in the 18th Congressional District. I believe in the power of our communities in this district. And regardless of what the Supreme Court has to say, I will be running for Congress in the 18th Congressional District in the March 2026 primary.
Jasmine?
Jesus. Okay.
Take your time. Take your time.
So for sure, we need Supreme Court reform ASAP. I have a number of bills for that if I could just get, enough Democrats to help me get this done. But we need ethics reform. We need to expand the court. There's a lot that we need to do with this Supreme Court because of how utterly trash they are. So I'll give you a little bit more backstory. So back when the 2021 maps were done, at that time when those maps were drawn, I was in the State House. I, along with Eddie Bernice Johnson, Al Green, and Sheila Jackson Lee, we entered into litigation and we sued the state of Texas over the current maps that we currently have. Texas has been historically found to be racially discriminatory ever since the Voting Rights Act was passed. Every time. So with that being said, you have the Shelby v. Holder case that came out in 2013. Once that court case came out, we ended up having our first redistricting post Shelby v. Holder, which got rid of Section 5, which required preclearance for those states that have always been racially discriminatory. So you would typically have to go through the Department of Justice. They have to evaluate whether or not you're changing voting laws and how that impacts people of color, as well as something like drawing your lines. Like basically you have Big Brother. They decided, oh no, we ain't got no training wheels, we out in these streets, and so they decided to act a fool. So the maps that we have right now are not good, just to be clear. We went through a trial for 3 weeks. So I got out of session one day, had to fly all the way to El Paso. I testify for hours on the stand in front of this exact panel of judges. And interestingly enough, the state was not very well prepared. I think they probably watched too much Fox News, and they believe that I'm low IQ. It was a very weird situation, to say the least, because there was a point in time in which I was being cross-examined by one of the attorneys for the state, and I said something, and she was like, that's improper. She can't opine on that because she's not a lawyer. And even the judges looked at her and was like, I was like, actually, ma'am, ma'am. But I was like, girl, you are not ready for prime time. Like, you don't even know who you, anyway. So whole other issue. So we go through the 3-week trial, and it's only within a matter of weeks. So they had not ruled on the legality of these particular maps. So I want y'all to understand. We were suing over the 21 maps. We finally got to a 3-week trial in 25. So this is 4 years later. Do y'all get this? Like, I need y'all to understand these timelines. And this is what Texas does. They play and do what's wrong and hope that nobody will do what this court just did, which gave them a temporary injunction, because they like, we can do wrong, but we will drag it out in court. So ultimately, the court doesn't get to rule on the substance of the case from the 21 maps, because all of a sudden they didn't see the light and now they want to draw new lines, which we have been asking them to do. So then the court is like, well, you got to see if they're going to draw good lines. And we know what they finna do. They not finna draw good lines. So they go, they draw the lines. And so then obviously they're terrible. When we say they are racist, which some people feel, ooh, I don't know about saying, okay, you got to call a thing a thing. So let me explain why it is so that y'all know. Like, so it's not just like, oh, it's racist, right? Like, because people try to act like people just go screaming racism. No, what it is that Texas, the entire state of Texas is 61% people of color. 61% people of color. 39% Anglo. When it came down to these lines, what was going to happen is basically we have a total of 38 House seats in the state of Texas. We are talking about a little bit more than 70% of our seats would be chosen by the 39%. That is what it is. So in order for the 39% to be the ones to choose over 70% of our seats that go to DC, that meant that you had to dilute and reduce the voices of the 61%. The estimates are that African Americans in the state of Texas, even though Texas has more African Americans than any other state, would be reduced to 1/5 the voice of their Anglo-Texan brothers and sisters. When it comes down to our Latino brothers and sisters, their voices would be valued at 1/3 that of their Anglo brothers and sisters in Texas. That is why they're racist. That is why they are racist. So they surgically drew these lines. So when you start to talk about the 18th and the change in the 18th, what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, you know what, it's only going to be so many seats that African Americans can choose in the state of Texas. So they basically decided we get 2 seats in the state that has more African Americans. So I don't know what's going to happen in them other states if we only get 2 seats where African Americans can choose their representation. The thing about this that is very confusing and why this court is so bad, there's a lot of reasons. But when it comes to voter suppression, one of the tactics is to have people confused. Confusion is voter suppression. And so right now you have this special election that's taking place, but we also are in filing for our next elections. Most people have not filed on the congressional level because nobody knows where they're supposed to run. You don't know what the lines are. Just earlier this week, they said you run on the 21 lines. Then last night, you got Alito saying, no, you're going to run on these new lines. And then they may come down and say, yes, well, you run on the old lines, but we have to file by December 8th. That's coming up. So, like, there's questions about whether or not they will delay our primary and move our primary. Currently, we are the first Tuesday in March. That is for 26, not for right now. His election is January 31st. The bad part about what's happening in the 18th, there's a lot of bad things about what's happening in the 18th. I want y'all to understand that there were 3 Democratic members that died in Congress since Trump swore in, okay? We had 3. The very first one to pass away was Sylvester. The very last seat that is going to be filled is Sylvester's because of our state. We have special elections that have taken place everywhere else in the country so much faster. And so they are trying to confuse people because people won't know what district they're supposed to be in. It is very bad. But what I want you to understand is that I do think that this court is going to be very political on this because this was a temporary order. It wasn't an order on the merits. And the reason I told you to remember that we just got to court on the original 21 case 4 years later is because technically if the court does not stop them right now, it may be 4 years before we go to court on the daggone case again. Well, guess what? We back to redistricting. We going through census again. And that's all they want. They don't care if they're doing what's right. All they care is that they can get what they want in the moment. And that's why this opinion was so significant. This 3-judge panel was 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat. The Trump Republican was the good one. The Reagan one was the problem. But at the end of the day, he wrote a 160-page opinion about why there will be irreparable harm if you allow this map to go into place right now. It would violate, we make constitutional arguments because they literally have decided that they wanted to decimate the Voting Rights Act anyway. We were arguing the Constitution, the strongest thing that we have in this land, allegedly. And they are now challenging that with a Trump judge writing the opinion. That's how bad this was. When you got a Trump judge calling you racist, you know it's bad.
Wow, yes, Christian. I do want to remind everyone to send in your questions. We will do audience questions shortly. But thank you for that, Jasmine. Christian, you have touched on the legacy of Congressional District 18. We have seen Barbara Jordan in that seat. We have seen Sylvester Turner, as you mentioned, and late, great Sheila Jackson Lee as well. Now, how do you view the legacy of CD18 yourself? I want you to touch on that, its previous leadership, and how should that history inform the district's future direction?
Yeah, there's an incredibly rich history to the 18th Congressional District. You know, with the passage of the Voting Rights Act, this district previously wasn't actually in the Houston area. It came to the Houston area when there was a redrawing of the lines and when Congresswoman Barbara Jordan was elected in the early 70s. And so these are heavyweights, right? Barbara Jordan, Mickey Leland, Craig Washington, Sheila Jackson Lee, Sylvester Turner, Erica Lee Carter. These are absolute heavyweights. But there's a few things that I have taken from them. One is that these were people who were unapologetic fighters. If you knew Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, if you knew that sister, I mean, at the age of 70, she was up later than me. She would call me at 11 p.m., say, hey, there's been a disaster. We need to be able to work directly with FEMA to get resources into the community. I need you to wake up, call the FEMA administrator. I mean, this was how she moved, and these issues were life or death for her. When something happened in the community, and that was the thing that I always loved about the late Congresswoman, is if something happened in the community and I needed her there, she was going to be there, right? She was not a Congresswoman for River Oaks. And she was not a Congresswoman for West U. She was a Congresswoman for so many of our communities that have been overlooked. I'll never forget when we were working alongside each other and doing the best we could to deal with some of the environmental justice issues happening out on the north side of town, areas that had been neglected. And she was all in every single day for those communities. So what I've taken away from that leadership is she's a fighter, right? And it's important to be that kind of advocate for your communities. When I look to someone like the late Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, I think about how a member of Congress from one district can have a national impact, can change the trajectory of our country. If you think back to the early 1970s, there was a hearing going on in the House Judiciary Committee because there had been a break-in at a hotel out in Washington, D.C. So they're investigating this, and the committee calls to speak the gentle lady from the 18th Congressional District of Texas. And Congresswoman Barbara Jordan pulls up her chair, gets to the mic, and gives one of the most prolific speeches you will ever hear in all of politics. And one of the things she says is, I will not sit idly by to the subversion, to the diminution, to the destruction of our Constitution. A speech just incredibly powerful. And you look at what happens next. It sets off a chain of events that leads to the toppling of a presidency. Richard Nixon resigns from office because of the Watergate scandal. And it was one member from the 18th Congressional District of Texas who helped set that in motion. Now, I've read my history books, I've seen a lot of documentaries, and I know that Richard Nixon was indeed corrupt. But his actions paled in comparison. Pale in comparison to what we're seeing from Donald Trump out of the White House right now. This is a president who turned 100 and some odd years of precedent on its head and said that people born in the United States are no longer U.S. citizens. This is a president who, when planes are falling out of the sky, he blames it on DEI. We all know that that's code for black folks. This is a president who would cut SNAP benefits despite the fact that the 18th Congressional District has the largest number of SNAP recipients of any district in Texas. This is a president who would cut Medicaid access despite the fact that so many people in this country are having to choose between putting food on their table and getting a life-saving surgery. A president who doesn't care and who has no problem stepping on the Constitution, on the law, and on our norms. So what I learned from Congresswoman Barbara Jordan is when it's time to show up, you got to show up. And you have to be prepared to have these fights at a national level. But when I look at the other people who have served our communities, what I love about whether it be Craig or Sylvester, these are folks who were of the community, right? These weren't politicians who were sent down from Washington, D.C. to try to represent our communities. These weren't people who had no history of putting in the work. These were people who were of the communities. And their stories are very similar to mine. I've got my wife and my parents here, and I'm always so proud to tell my story because it's not made up for a campaign, it's my real life. When I was growing up, there were nights we would not have eaten were it not for the WIC program. There were many days I would have been at school on an empty stomach were it not for free lunch in our public schools. My parents would have never purchased their first home were it not for VA down payment assistance that allowed us, when I was in high school, to purchase our first home with just $500 down. I'd have never went to college without a Pell Grant, would have never went to law school without my dad's post 9/11 GI Bill. Thank you, Dad. And my brother almost certainly would have died from childhood cancer were it not for my parents' military health benefits that fully funded his bone marrow transplant. And he's been in remission for more than 20 years, right? Every single step of the way. It was a strong faith, a strong family, and it was a government that cared, that was thoughtful, that really invested in people. So that's why I get hopped up and I fight for Medicare for all, because I don't believe that any kid out there should be dying from cancer because their parents can't afford health care. That's why I fight to restore the Department of Education, because I don't believe that any kid out there who has the knowledge and the know-how to go to college should be forced not to be able to attend college because they don't have access to a Pell Grant. That's why I fight for these programs, because I've lived this and I know how the social safety net can take you from a situation where you have a family that's maybe sent more people to prison than to college to end that bloodline having the youngest person and the first African American elected Harris County attorney. This is a country where if you have opportunity, it's the great equalizer. You can go anywhere in this country, reach any level of success if you have opportunity and you have a supportive and a caring and a helpful and a thoughtful government. So when I look to Washington, D.C., and I see that we have a president trying to tear all of that down, I understand the importance of the legacy of this seat. And I'm so proud to be supported by former Congressman Craig Washington, by former Congresswoman Erica Lee Carter. But one thing I told to both of them is I'm not running to be Craig Washington. I'm not running to be Sheila Jackson Lee. I'm running to be Christian Menefee. And I plan to take all of the strengths that I learned from them, but I plan to take the experiences that I had in my upbringing to make sure that our district is taken care of, to make sure that not a single community has to go without sidewalks or without grocery stores, and to make sure that every single day I'm in D.C., I'm fighting on behalf of the interests of the people I love in my community.
Coming off of your comments there, President Donald Trump, he ran on the promise of prosperity, but there's no denying that many people now are feeling the squeeze of higher prices, fewer jobs, less money in their pockets. I want to throw in this question from my colleague Greg Grugan over at Fox 26. He wants to know, how does congressional leadership change that? And who now, like which party, can offer the promise of prosperity? Jasmine?
Child, well, I can tell you who can't, because you didn't ran it down, and truly he has fulfilled his promise of prosperity to himself and his family and to all of his friends. They real. I mean, Elon about to become the first trillionaire. I mean, yeah, his homies are I mean, it worked out really well for them. The rest of us are getting robbed. Like you talked about Nixon. Child, Nixon is turning in his grave right now. Like, why I give up my good job? No, truly, like thinking about like a president that has the audacity to say, I'm mad because I'm a criminal and y'all decided to investigate me, so I'm gonna take over $200 million of y'all tax dollars for like bothering me. That's where we are. Or the U.S. senators that were like, you know what? Yeah, we had some stuff to do with January 6th, and because y'all investigated us, we gonna go ahead and write in our own checks as well in order for us to reopen the government, because that's what they did. That's what they did. They're cashing out, like they are taking, or Kristi Noem, who is spending hundreds of millions of dollars on ads with some ad company that just happens to be her homie's ad company. Like, when I tell you that they are robbing us, this is not, like, I need y'all to understand, because there are people that are saying things like, oh, you know, it's left versus right, it's conservative versus liberal. No, it's not. It is right versus wrong. Like, that, I mean, I want to be clear. I am a Democrat, all right? But I will speak up for real conservatives and say that conservatism does not tell you to go and steal the American taxpayer dollars. That's not conservatism. Conservatism is everybody, you know, ain't got no regulations, just go have fun, right? Like, conservatism is saying things like, let's be real tight with the purse strings. This is not tight with the purse strings at all. I mean, when we're talking about how much money we continue to spend with this guy, and conservatism also is low taxes. Tariffs. He got tariffs. He like Oprah with the tariffs. You get one, you get one. Like, I mean, seriously, there are tariffs everywhere. None of this is conservatism. Like, and they won't speak up. Sadly enough, the person allegedly that's speaking up for conservatism is Marjorie. Lord, we lost. So I will say a couple of things about this, because people are like, what is it that we can do and how did we get here? So one of the things about the big ugly bill is that most people don't understand that we haven't really felt the worst effects of it, because most of it actually has not gone into effect because they wanted it to go into effect after the midterms. But now you have the insurance companies, they know what the legislation is, as well as those community health centers, as well as some of those hospitals. They know what's coming, and so in preparation for it, we are seeing some of the results. But the problem is we're not even fully there, okay? So when we look at something like that, what they did is they made the tax cuts to the top 1%ers or so, they made them permanent. So as we were in the shutdown and we were like, hey, we need to make sure that these tax subsidies for healthcare, if anyone gets their health insurance on the marketplace, we just want to extend it. They were like, no. But they made the tax cuts for the rich permanent. So what this means is, like, tax revenue, that's exactly what it is. It's all the money that we got coming in. So basically they said, you know what, we're going to reduce our income. So let's say we were making $500,000 a year. Now they like, you know what, we only want our salary to be $125,000. So they reduced our salary. They reduced our income. So then they were like, well, we ain't got as much money, so we can't give out as much money. So that's where they were like, you know what, we're going to reduce our income. So therefore, we're going to pull $1 trillion out of the healthcare ecosystem. So that means that the rest of us have to support making sure that that hospital still remains in the community, because their bills are their bills. They got to get the money from somewhere if the doors are going to stay open. What people need to understand is, and I think that we failed because we kept talking about Medicaid or Medicare, and some people are like, well, I ain't on that, so that don't impact me. Yes, it does. Just like if you're not on SNAP, it impacts you that they cut hundreds of millions of dollars, actually billions, hundreds of billions of dollars out of SNAP. You know why? Because if they don't have that money, then that impacts our farmers, because they're planting, projecting that this is how much they're going to sell. That also impacts our grocery stores. So your costs go up. So we have, like, basically everything that could go wrong is going wrong right now because of the policies. So we're like getting kicked while we're down. So what we need is, at a very minimum, we need enough people so that we can get over this tariff fight. Now, we are in court about the tariffs, and now we're hoping and bracing that that branch of government will save us, because we have cowardice from Republicans, both in the House and the Senate. But if we can get people in place, we can stop him on the tariffs, because he's exceeding his legal authority anyway. And at a very minimum, if we can stop him on the tariffs, then that puts us into a better position as it relates to some of those jobs that are going away. Some of the reason that jobs are going away is because people literally aren't making as much money because everything costs more. Like, you have to understand the entire ecosystem. So if there's one thing I can leave you with, because I just gave y'all a whole bunch real fast, what I want you to understand is, when you see something, even if you're like, this doesn't directly impact me, I need you to think through it, and I need you to start asking questions, even if you ask in ChatGPT. I need you to ask, how will this impact me? Because some of these things, the immigration policies are driving cost up. Like, everything that could take everything in a very bad way right now, he is doing that, and that is why the economy is where it is. That is why we have lost over 1 million jobs right now in this country. That is why we have less availability than we do people that are looking for jobs. Like, we are in a recession. I don't care what nobody say. And almost like within a week of him swearing in, I told them he was going to send us to a recession, because that's what his policies are doing. And we haven't even talked about how he literally is doing everything that he can to get us into war by illegally killing people on boats because he think they drug dealers. Like, he is trying to, so that's also more money, right? Like, I need y'all to understand, we are not in a good way. So if you're here, that means that you're a part of the choir. That means that you understand the assignment. But the other part of your assignment is to actually talk to other people. You got to talk to people besides those that are sitting in here. You got to make sure that you're talking to your neighbors, your friends with the little red hats. You need to talk to everybody, because the red hats is hurting too. They hurting bad. You need to talk to them so that people understand, because one of the reasons that they've been able to do so much of what they've done is that people don't understand how government works. And so with them not understanding how government works, they can get caught up on personalities and say, well, I'm going to vote for this person because I like their personality. And at the end of the day, that personality ain't what you need when it comes time to decide whether or not you're going to have food on the table or a job or a roof over your head, or your child is going to have access to education. It is so important that we go more than surface level when it comes to politics on every single level. So yes, we are focused on the federal level. That's where we are right now. But I need y'all to understand that it's those county elected officials, those school board officials, those city council persons that are protecting, and state, in the good states, that are protecting the people from a hostile federal government. So y'all need to encourage people to show up for the special election, show up for the, they gotta just, every time it's an election, I don't care if it's for the dog catcher, you need to tell your friends it's important that we got the right dog catcher.
Yeah, and I'll add, I think it should be abundantly clear to folks that right now it is the Democratic Party that is trying to work to make life more affordable. If you look at the gubernatorial race in New Jersey, the gubernatorial race in Virginia, the mayor's race out in New York City, affordability has been the thing that Democrats are running on and the thing that we need to deliver on. There was a recent poll by Fox News that showed that a majority of conservative voters in this country believe that their grocery costs, their cost for necessities like gasoline, all of this stuff is more expensive now than it was when Donald Trump first took office, right? So America is becoming more unaffordable, and the reason for that is because of the Republican majority in Congress and Donald Trump as a president. I'll give you a direct example. Here in Harris County, we led a coalition of local governments to apply for a grant from the federal government to bring low-cost solar energy to underserved communities, right? Raise your hand if your electricity bill is way too high, right? Okay, so we know that this is an important part of people's lives, trying to lower the cost of electricity. We received a grant for $255 million, and $50 million of that was going to come right here to Harris County to lower folks' electricity bill about $400 a year, right? Which is a big deal to folks who are struggling in this country. When the Trump administration got in office, Donald Trump had his EPA administrator eliminate a $7 billion program that was designed to put money directly back into your pockets. Meanwhile, they're overseeing one of the largest wealth transfers in the history of this country by giving more and more tax breaks to billionaires. They're trying to make America more affordable for Jeff Bezos. They're trying to make America more affordable for Elon Musk, and they're hanging us out to dry. That's why every single where I go, I talk about my affirmative vision for my district, right? I want to beat up Trump as much as the next guy, but I also want a community where the minimum wage isn't $7.50, where we're not telling people, hey, you either go to college or you're going to be unsuccessful in life. But instead, we are preparing people for the workforce by having workforce development programs, because we have a shortage of jobs in construction and electricians and plumbers. The types of jobs where if you get in, you work 10, 15 years, you can make a good living and take care of your family. That's why I try to push for unions all throughout the workforce, because I know what it's like to be striving for myself only and not be able to get the compensation that I'm due. So if you look at what's happening in Congress right now, it's abundantly clear that you have one party that is doing every single thing they can to help the big corporations and the billionaires. Then you have another party that's focused on helping working people. But it can't just be us running our mouth. We have to actually deliver wins for people.
When it comes to national politics, we have seen so much divisiveness, so much gridlock, maybe more than we've ever seen for some of us in our lifetime. How does the climate in Congress affect those issues that are happening right here in Congressional District 18? How would you say that?
National politics is ugly right now. It's so funny. So every now and again, my team will put out like a post on social media, right? Where we're, for example, when we were marketing this event, right? We're like, hey, come on out, come to this town hall with Christian Menefee and with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. And then we'll send over a collaboration request to Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, which for those of you who use Instagram, you just hit approve, and then it becomes both of our posts. Every time we do that, them comments go crazy. Whoo, they go out of their way to demean the Congresswoman, to attack her and who she is and her integrity. But any time that a leader is attacked in that way, that just means that they're standing for something important. Congress has become an incredibly ugly place. there used to be a time in politics where you could disagree on stuff, but at the end of the day, there were certain norms. There were outer bounds that you didn't cross. And I think that Donald Trump changed a lot of that. Look, I got two main goals on this front when I go to Congress. One is I'm going to have my red lines, right? Lines that on behalf of my community I will never cross. And I look forward to standing next to the Congresswoman anytime they try to come after her and having her back as well. And that means when it's time for intense debate and it's time to fight, I will be there each and every time. But I'm also going to work as hard as I can to bring resources back to my community. And I don't care if you red, blue, black, white, orange. If you're gonna bring some money back to my community, I will work with you on that specific thing. And I've done that as the county attorney. You know, on the northwest side of town, a historically black neighborhood, there was a large corporation that has a landfill out there, and they were trying to push it more deeply into the community. I worked with one of our Republican county commissioners who I disagree with on just about everything under the sun, but we got it done for that community and stopped that landfill from expanding. When large cigarette companies were coming out here and trying to get our kids hooked on vaping products, you know, they'll have a flavor called strawberry yum yum, which ain't marketed to anybody in this room, but it's intended to market to kids. I teamed up with the Attorney General, whose name shall not be mentioned, and we were able to go after them and to get tens of millions of dollars to come back from the state of Texas. So I know how to work with folks when it's time to work with folks. I think the problem, though, is right now, on the Democratic side of the aisle, your metric of success is your performance, right? Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is judged based on how she stands tall on the issues that matter, based on how she brings resources back to the 30th Congressional District, based on how she is a beacon and a light for so many folks in our community. That's not how you're judged on the Republican side of the aisle right now. There's only one metric that matters on the Republican side of the aisle. Only one. How tight you are with Donald Trump. That's why you're seeing Marjorie Taylor Greene resign from office, because she fell out with Donald Trump and she's worried about how she's going to be targeted after that. That's why you'll see folks like Texas Governor Greg Abbott sell his entire state up the river in racist redistricting of our maps because he was asked to do so by the President of the United States. That's why you're seeing so many Republicans being willing to say so many hurtful and distasteful and disgusting things and act on them because they're trying to appeal to Donald Trump. And until you get that strong man out, you're going to have one half of the country in public office who is working for the best interests of their communities, and one half of the country in public office who is working for the best interests of one man. And that is no recipe for success for our country.
Yeah, I'll add to that very shortly. All right, so you know, you brought up the AG whose name we're not gonna mention, but obviously there's a Senate race that's brewing right now, and we have two senators, one who I won't mention by name because he ain't worth nothing, and then we have the other one. The one that's up. And so my mom on yesterday was like, hey, you know, that ad that I told you was running with you in it, I finally recorded it. So the fact that I had anything nice to say about John Cornyn is actually a bad ad for him. That is the environment that we're in. He is my senator. He is all of our senators. Like, at the end of the day, you know, there is this kind of persona of like who people think I am, because the things that go viral are going to be those big clashes. But the reality is that, like, no matter what the numbers are, you've got to work. And if I've got a senator in my state that wants to work for the good of all of his constituency, then that means that, like, a real good senator is actually going to listen and work with, like, all of its members. And so honestly, John Cornyn, from the day that I got there, his office has helped us. Like, we couldn't get sworn in. I don't know if y'all remember that drama about them not being able to pick their speaker. So we couldn't get sworn in. It was Cornyn's office that actually called our office and said, hey, we know you can't get into computers, you can't do anything, send all your constituents to us, because if they're my constituents, they're also his constituents. And they did that. And honestly, that is very basic. That is how government is supposed to work. But right now, he is fighting for his political life because he just wants to be halfway normal, right? And right now, that side, it's all about, like, have you bent the knee enough to Donald Trump? But that doesn't work for the rest of us. Because you can go and ask those ranchers, as I was reading the article about all the people that are about to lose their jobs at Tyson's, because of beef. Our ranchers in this country, specifically in Texas, they are losing out. We right now are having record bankruptcy filings by our farmers. Who does that impact? A lot, Texas. And then when we start to talk about trade, who is one of the largest traders in this country? Texas. We trade more than most large countries. I mean, that is how much trade we do. So when you start to talk about the tariffs, when you start to talk about what he's done, the tariffs impacted the soybean industry. When he decided he was going to send $40 billion down to Argentina and then telling oh yeah, Argentina got that beef. And now we don't. Like, I need y'all to understand that it's not about what makes sense for the people that elected them. The only thing that they are trying to do is appease and please him. And frankly, y'all saw what happened when the mayor-elect from New York walked up in the office though, huh? I want that to be a message to people, is that you cannot be weak with a bully. So standing in the Oval Office, not even sworn into office, he said what he said. They asked him, is he yes, he's a fascist. He did. Now, the only reason that he's been able to do half the things that he's been able to do is because everybody is weak. You got weak Republicans, and frankly, you got a lot of weak Democrats as well.
All right, it is time to open this up to some audience questions. We have Alyssa here who is going to read some of your questions. If you have not already passed your question on to a volunteer, please go ahead and do so. But I'll hand it off to Alyssa.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Alyssa Rochelle Savannah, and I'm a member of CD18. We did receive over 100 of questions, and we're going to try to get through as many as possible. Okay, first one. Christian, what is your reason? Reason for starting, reason for not giving up. Out of all you could have pursued, you chose politics. Reason for your goals, professionally and personally.
Whew. So, as I mentioned, I was the first in my family to go to college, and and again, my dad is sitting over there. My dad was very adamant, when you turn 18, look, you ain't got to go to college, but you sure do got to get up out of here. But he had given me the tools that I needed to be able to get up out of there. So I went to college and I started practicing at a law firm. And frankly, I was just happy to be able to have things, right? And it was in 2016 when Donald Trump won the Republican primary. I very much remember just thinking, I got to do more for my community. Like, my parents had always raised me to understand, given that they were both in the military, is you can't just sit back and expect the democracy you want to see to happen. You have to be an active participant. So I started getting more involved in community events and civic clubs. And then I became the president of a local club out here. And then my predecessor in the county attorney's office just did something that I disagreed with. He was defending an unconstitutional cash bail system, which would put, and all the time did put, people who didn't have a lot of money into jail for low-level nonviolent crimes. You could get arrested for driving with a suspended license, end up with a $1,500 bail, you can't pay it, and you might find yourself in jail for 6 months before your case even got adjudicated. Think about spending 6 months in jail because you didn't have $1,500, right? So I decided to run against him. And frankly, when the race started, I just knew I wasn't going to be successful. But I did it because I didn't like, Democrat, Republican, I don't care what your title is. If you do wrong by my communities, you have to see me. So I ran against him and messed around and won. All right, here we go. But since that time, I've done my best to take the county attorney's office, which I think historically had been thought of as a backroom office that just kind of pushed paper, and turn it into an office that was dynamic and that fought for people's rights and that fought for communities that typically politicians run away from instead of run into. And seeing everything that has happened in our country, when the late Sylvester Turner passed away earlier this year, I just thought about what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now. And I truly believe that the fight for the soul of our nation, the America that we're going to see for my kids, for my grandkids, for y'all's grandkids, that fight is happening right now. Donald Trump is stretching the outer bounds of the Constitution right now. He is threatening the lives of other public servants right now. He's transferring wealth from the working class to the wealthy right now. All of that. How our country's going to look in 50 years, that fight is happening right now. And I'll never forget, when I was at my first law firm, we had just come off of a long trial, and I was with an older, very conservative guy who was the lead lawyer on the case. And so I'm a baby lawyer. I was like 25 at the time, and he's probably 60 years old. And I asked him, hey, why don't you run for judge? You know, you'd be a fantastic judge. I mean, you know the law very well. Like, you know, you're smart. And he looked at me, and I'll never forget this. And he said, Christian, I'm not an umpire. I don't call balls and strikes. When there's a fight happening, I am on the field. And that always stuck with me. And so my view of public service is you don't run for office for titles. You don't run for office for elevation. You don't run for office to promote yourself. But I'm the type of person where if there is a fight going on for the soul of our nation, what kind of public servant would I be to run away from that? So my goal is to go out to Washington, D.C., not to be seen, not to be heard. I'm not looking to be famous, none of that. I'm looking to go out there and to protect and defend my communities and to advance the communities that I care about. And when this is all said and done, y'all don't have to name a single school or library or none of that after me. As long as my people are in a better position than they were in when I first started, I'll be all right.
What's your exact plan to address maternal mortality crisis affecting Black women, and why is that so important to you?
Yeah, I'll go first, and then Congresswoman, you can jump in here too. So we have a maternal mortality crisis in this country, where if a Caucasian woman goes to the doctor and she is pregnant, she is being seen, the chances of her losing her life, her having a medical episode, are far, far lower than an African-American woman. And, you know, I know this firsthand from experience. I have 2 young boys, and my wife had a condition with our second child, and it resulted in her having a C-section. And there was a period during that procedure that got terrifying for the both of us. So many folks throughout our community experience something like that, and it can lead not just to a traumatic experience, but the end of a life. Thankfully, we have smart and talented and thoughtful leaders in Congress, Black women like Congresswoman Laura Underwood out of Illinois, who have a bill called the Omnibus Bill, which is designed to address some of these issues. One thing that struck me the most was when you go into a hospital and your spouse is giving birth, it didn't really occur to me how much they can be crying out for something and nobody's listening. How they're telling you exactly what's going on and you're not understanding. And sometimes us fellas, like, we're part of the problem. My wife on our oldest one, you heard me telling the story, babe? All right, cool. She said, all right, fine. When she was pregnant with our oldest, she had been having like really bad like pains all throughout the night. And she had gone for a run earlier, so we thought like her legs were cramping or something. She had been in labor. And when I came downstairs, we had to rush her to the hospital, but she had been telling me like, hey, something doesn't feel right, and it just never clicked for me that that's what it was. And then when we got to the hospital, you have to like actively advocate in many instances. When a room full of doctors come in who don't look like you, who don't understand your experience in this country, and they try to tell you one thing and you tell them, my body disagrees with you. So it's about increasing funding for folks to have doulas and advocates to be there with them. It's about ensuring that our medical professionals are being properly educated to understand that medicine is not a one-size-fits-all thing, that you have to handle your patients with the experiences that they bring with you. And it's about ensuring that we're increasing funding for mental health treatment for people who experience the trauma of going through that. So send me to Congress. I will fully support the Omnibus Act and make sure that we are doing everything we can to address the maternal mortality crisis in this country.
I won't speak long on it, but African American women are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth than their Anglo sisters. And recently, there was a video out of the Dallas area that went uber viral of a woman who was clearly in pain, and you could see that the nurse could care less. And so when we think about, how do we deal with these things, and it's so important that Christian talks about the advocacy and talks about doulas and things like that, but it's even more important, like I've worked on legislation because I do have the medical center in my district, so I've asked questions about like, all right, how can I make sure like people that go into the hospital to have a baby come out and come with their baby? And so I like just ask like basic questions because that's not necessarily my space. My space has been in practicing law. And so one of the things that we've got to do is diversity. I know it's a bad word nowadays. It's such a bad word. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we have diverse teams. And so I started to talk about like the numbers as it relates to like nursing students, as it relates to doctors, and like what some of the encumbrances were, and trying to make sure that they got the resources to be able to get those students that may want to go in, because it is clear that in that video that went viral, the mama knew there was a problem. Now, she was yelling at her and telling her you shouldn't have came here anyway. That wasn't what mama needed to do in that moment, I'm sure. But like the nurse wouldn't even look at her. She wouldn't even turn and look at her, right? And so we've got to make sure that we are also in states like Texas, like just like we need pre-clearance because we got racist issues in this state, we need to see if you are getting federal dollars, like we need to make sure that we are getting very good information about what is happening with your patients so that we can have corrective measures that we put in place. Like you ain't finna get all the monies from us if like you continue to have certain problems and things like that. So we've got to come up with like creative ways to do that part of it as well. But we also got to make sure that we ourselves are more informed. Because and that's sad that we have to do that, but that means that we've got to make sure that we are giving federal dollars to those organizations that are trying to inform and teach new moms about advocacy. And the final point that I'll say on this is that one of the things I didn't know, and I don't have any kids, so I've not experienced this beautiful tearing up of your body.
Let me tell you.
but I had no idea. And this is something that we fought for on the state level, which was to expand kind of the resources as it relates to Medicaid, is what happens to a woman's heart, especially Black women. So we have a lot of women, especially Black women, that will deliver safely and that kind of stuff. But within that like year after birth, it's not just the mental health, it's actually their hearts. So we are seeing that they are having like heart issues because you're pumping blood for two. And most people are not even looking at the heart health. So we've got to just make sure that we are supporting those organizations that are making sure that people have the education, whether it's the person that's having the baby or whether it's the person that is supporting that person that's having the baby, so that we can hopefully save our lives.
Jasmine, let me tell you, you're never the same after childbirth. I have a 4-year-old. I can attest.
I've heard all this.
All the stories. I will point out, if you do have a question card, go ahead and raise it up so a volunteer can get it from you. We're going to try to get through as many questions as we can. Listen.
What's your plan to change the trajectory for young Black men in this district over the next decade on education, jobs, and criminal justice? Can you offer one commitment you're willing to be held accountable for by data and not just feelings?
Ooh,
That was
All
by
right.
Robert Kirk.
that's a great question.
It's a fantastic question. So the first thing is, let me tell you about what I've done at the county attorney's office. When I was young, I didn't know a single lawyer out there. I played football in high school, got injured my junior year, and I had a teacher who told me that I talked too much, and so I should go do debate. And I did debate, and from debate, I learned that I can talk a little bit. And so I thought, okay, maybe I'd be a lawyer. The only lawyer I knew was Jack McCoy from Law and Order. And I thought, like, he talked, I talk, all right, I can be a lawyer. But that's how I learned about the practice of law. It was through a television show and through doing a little bit of debate. And so I told myself that if I ever got into a position of power, I was going to make sure that I am reaching back to help young people, and especially young Black boys. So at the county attorney's office, I created a program called the Summer Legal Academy. This is a program that we do over the course of the summer. It's a 3-week experiential learning program where we take about 30 some odd schools, 30 kids from public schools here in the area, including Black students, and we put them in this program where we teach them about applying to law school, teach them about taking the LSAT, We teach them about law school coursework. We bring in law school professors who teach them how to read a case and then do the Socratic method with them as if they were in a law school classroom. We introduce them to lawyers, to judges, and here's the best part, we pay them $15 an hour. Because when I was in high school, I pushed carts at a local grocery store, and there was no way I would have given up that job in order to go learn something. And so this program now is in like its 4th or 5th year, and we actually have kids who are in the program in high school and who will soon be applying to law school to be lawyers. We're so proud of it. So 2 things. On the criminal justice front, look, I commit to you right now to supporting the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. I think that we have to ban chokeholds at the federal level. I want to end both qualified immunity and the Monell Doctrine, which stop people from being able to file lawsuits against governmental entities. And we have a real problem. Look, our communities are over-policed. People are arrested more than in other communities. Then they get overcharged, over-prosecuted. And then when they're convicted, they serve longer than their counterparts of other races. So I've worked as hard as I can as the county attorney, and I will as a member of Congress, to increase the number of cite and release programs. Because you shouldn't be arresting somebody and taking them into jail if it's a low-level misdemeanor that isn't going to impact the safety of our community. On the jobs front, look, I am passionate about workforce development programs. I think in this country right now, we have told everybody the way that you're going to be successful and you get out the streets is you got to go to college. And if you don't go to college, then tough luck to you. You're not going to be able to be successful. And meanwhile, these colleges are doing what? Bumping up the cost of education year after year after year. When I graduated, I had $200,000 in student loan debt. I did not have $200,000 in education. I'm going to tell you that right now. So I want to increase the uses for Pell Grants substantially so that people can get into these programs, increase the number of those programs at high schools and community colleges. All the data right now will tell you we have an extreme shortage in skilled labor workers, right? We have a shortage of electricians, of plumbers, of folks who work in marine life, right? Folks who work in construction. But we have a whole lot of people who are going to school like I did and getting an international business degree and don't know nothing about any other country, right? So it's about skilling people up so that they can go into those jobs, that they can get paid while we're learning. And that's exactly what we did at the county. We used federal dollars to create an apprenticeship program, right, that brought people into careers in construction and like elevator construction and other spaces, transportation, and we paid them to learn, right, so that they can be successful even if they don't go to college. You send me to Congress and I'm gonna support those exact types of programs when I get up there as well. And look, I know it is also relatively controversial, but I have made clear, in the same way that Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee was a staunch advocate for reparations for descendants of slaves, I'm gonna be the exact same way when I get up to Congress. I'm unabashed about that, I'm unafraid about that. You have a race of people who were forced to build this country and received no financial payment for that. Every single other major subgroup that has been subjugated in that way over an elongated period of time has been paid reparations, and black folks have not. And the excuse is always, well, we can't figure it out. We send a lot of smart people to government. We should figure out a way to figure it out. So I'm committed to, when I get to Congress, and I guess the last thing is, in the Democratic Party, right now, we have a problem with young black men, a huge problem. And to me, the main problem is we send people who are not from their community, who don't look like them, who don't understand their community, to talk to them about stuff that they don't care about. And instead of going and talking to them and learning about the issues that are important to them, we come and try to preach to them about the issues that should be important to them. I have a very close family member, a cousin, who in the last election was trying to decide who to vote for president. And I mean, this is a black man, right? A real life black man who he couldn't care less about Donald Trump, has no respect for him, but he said, look, the Democratic Party, y'all are always trying to tell me what I need to care about, right? I have 2 daughters. I'm trying to do all I can to make sure that they're best set up for success in a country that has always done its best to label me a criminal, to strip away my opportunities, right? To over-police my communities and to put me in less of a position to be successful. So I'm committed to being that voice to advocate for young black men in Congress, and there are not a bunch of those voices right now.
This will be the last question, and it'll be for Christian and Congresswoman. Besides being anti-Trump, what specific issues are the Democrats putting on the table in preparation for 2026 and 2028?
I plan to focus very heavily on the wealth inequality in this country and how the ladder to the American dream has been stripped out for so many folks. There used to be a time in this country where you could work 40 hours a week, you could get the house, the 2 cars, send your kids off to do better than you did, retire at a reasonable age, and still have a little money to kick it on a weekend. But for most folks right now in this country, they are working multiple jobs. They are struggling to make ends meet. If something happens to their health, it can set them back financially decades. And they're retiring at a later age than their predecessors did. And it's because our country has become so focused on the wealthy class, on the billionaire class, that we have turned our back on the working class in this country. There's some data that came out that showed that since the late 1970s, the average worker in wages right now is making 18% more than the average worker did in the late 1970s, right? The average CEO's total compensation, right, from that same time period has gone up 1,300%. We have hundreds of more billionaires now than we did just 20 years ago. And it's because our system is set up to benefit only a certain class of folks. You look at the tax breaks that we offer to large corporations in this country. You look at the tax breaks that we offer to the wealthy in this country. Many of y'all paid more taxes last year than Jeff Bezos did. It makes absolutely no sense. And at the same time, we're not raising the minimum wage. We've gone away from a pension system to a 401k system, right? And we're setting it up so that Social Security will fail because so many Republicans in Washington, D.C. would rather give money to the wealthy and to the military instead of giving it to the folks who need it. So what I plan to focus on is bringing back a true working class, a middle class in this country. That means doing every single thing I can to increase wages. That means providing better pathways to the workplace. That means making sure that unions are able to protect folks in the workplace. I'm fine with ensuring that we tax folks who have a net worth of 10 million to 100 million at a higher rate so that we can fund Social Security. I have no problem raising those taxes. And that's why I support, and I'm the only candidate in this race who supports Medicare for all, because I don't believe that anybody in this country should have to choose between putting food on the table and getting life-saving treatment. So I'm going to Congress to fight for working class folks. I grew up in that exact family, and I see that ladder, that opportunity at the American dream being kicked out from under so many folks in this country. And I think that every single branch of government should be fighting for those folks in this country. If we don't have a strong middle class, then what even country do we have?
I'm so glad that he got the script. No, just kidding. So definitely one of the things that I think the Democrats, at least those of us in the House, I think that they're going to end up leaning in on healthcare. I think they're going to lean in very heavily because when the shutdown ended, people were so disappointed because people finally understood why the fight mattered. And so I think that that is going to be something that we're going to have to pick up on for sure. So I definitely think healthcare is going to be one of those things that we run on because people are really already talking about the strain. And it is. It's like a matter of, am I going to pay for my medication or am I going to go get food? Am I going to pay to make sure that I can have healthcare or am I going to pay for my kids to go to school? Like, people are making really difficult decisions. So this all comes down to affordability. So I think we're going to work on healthcare. I think that we're going to focus on wages. I don't know if everybody in the caucus has said raise the wage, but they need to be. I mean, we know that the minimum wage is only $7.25 and it's not gone up. But again, when we talk about what other people are making, and I think there's a good way to tie in all the chaos of the shutdown to make people understand why this is really important. Because there was this image that people had of who it is that is on welfare, right? Like the person that is getting EBT and SNAP benefits. The image was some lazy, typically Black woman, right? That was the image that they wanted to portray. But then people found out that we have 42 million people that rely on SNAP benefits in this country, and that's only $6 a day to eat, $2 a meal, which I'm not really sure what all you get for that, but they wanted to make people believe who weren't on SNAP benefits that these people are the real drain on our system, when you're worried about somebody getting $6 a day to eat, and the real welfare queen is like Elon Musk, who gets $8 million a day from the federal government. So I think it is going to be important to make sure that we tie this in and say, you know what? Y'all saw the images. You saw service members that were out there in line because they aren't lazy. They work for the federal government and they're not making enough money. We saw that there were absolutely people that go to work every single day having to stand in this line. So what is the problem? They're not being paid enough. So we absolutely need to tie that in and say, listen, this is how we can save your tax dollars, or we can move tax dollars over to make sure that we can support healthcare, comprehensive healthcare reform, is if maybe people don't need to rely on the $6 a day to eat because their employers are actually just going to pay them their worth. We're going to make them do that. Because again, we've got corporate welfare in this country as well. They are the ones that are getting all of our tax dollars, and then we are the ones that are footing the bill because they're not doing right by their own workers. So I think that we've got to lean in and make sure that we're talking about that. We obviously need worker protections, which comes with everything about supporting unions, especially in the state of Texas. It's bad. Ooh, it's bad here. So we got to make sure that we're doing that. And I think that the final point of what we are really gonna, I mean, we have been leaning in on democracy, and I think because it is not one of those tangible things that you can reach out and touch, it was always kind of wonky for us to fight for. But I think we instead will most likely talk about corruption. Because one thing that this administration has done is revealed all of the loopholes within our system that have allowed, if you get the wrong guy into place, because everybody's sitting around, how can he do this? How can he do this? How can he, like, I think we're gonna lean in on corruption and fortification of our democracy, but I think we'll start it off by talking about corruption because it is so easy to see how corrupt they are. And I think if people are just upset about that, then they will say, you know what, we gotta do something, because at least they're trying to fix the corruption, because nobody likes corruption. And then I think finally, we're just gonna have to talk about the tariffs. The tariffs are eating people alive. I mean, he even did his own executive order to roll back some of his own tariffs because he was like, you know what, this I'm gonna fix it for you, sir, you're the problem, sir. So, so I think that those are some of the things that we're gonna ultimately lean in on. Historically, like when we were running this last time, we were talking about housing a lot because housing was like a #1 issue. And so when the vice president was going around campaigning, she was talking about $25,000 down payment for people that were trying to get into homes. I mean, that would have been fantastic. Housing is still a really big issue, and it still, again, goes to affordability, but he's talking about a 50-year mortgage. Y'all, 50-year mortgage. Like, that's what he's talking about, and that's definitely not the answer. So I think it will be interesting to see if we end up picking up on the legislation that the vice president was actually like really leaning in on and saying, instead of trying to saddle you down for 50 years where you potentially will never own this home, because they're trying to say, well, we're going to give you, it'll be cheaper, right? Because now you only pay $200, so now it's affordable. Like, bro, like, that's not how that works. So anyway, so I think we may end up picking up on her legislation, but I don't know how the numbers work out because we, again, cut ourselves short because we don't have the income. So I think a real big win for us is to raise the minimum wage so that we can pull some people out of poverty so that we don't have as many people that are relying on it. The final point I'll make is, I know Democrats don't want to talk about immigration, but I am, because so I don't think that they will, but I do think it's important that we educate people. And right now we are winning on immigration because now they see that he wasn't just going and getting the bad guys. But when we talk about things like Social Security, most people don't understand that it's those folk that aren't necessarily citizens, when they go to work, they actually pay into our Social Security. They pay into Social Security that they then cannot pull down on. And undocumented folk account for approximately $100 billion in tax revenue. So like, it's just good fiscal policy is what I would like to say about it. So I think we need to lean in on immigration and really push for real comprehensive immigration reform, because that's been another way that they have lined their pockets. If you saw where his border czar should be sitting in prison now because he took the y'all know about the $50,000 in a brown bag? Okay, so he took the $50,000 in a brown bag. Trump like, act like you ain't see that. And it was so that he could get contracts for people that were close to him. It is our understanding that there are people that are getting contracts simply because of relationships within the White House. And so you got to fill those bodies. So this is yet another prison complex that we have created in this country. And all it, again, is just taking taxpayer dollars and is not doing anything for us. And so I think we do need to talk about immigration and educate people on why it is that we need real comprehensive immigration reform. And I think we can win if we do it right.
All right, that is all the time we have for audience questions. However, excuse the interruption. Thank you to our officers there. Now, Christian will be answering the questions that we could not get to. I know you all had some tremendous questions. We had a lot, but you'll be getting to those on social media. So please follow him on all platforms so you can get that question answered or hear his response to your question. I'm going to do something I do on Chatting with Chelsea that my producer hates. I'm going to squeeze in one last one. This is for you, Jasmine. Now, if Christian gets this seat, and I want you to do this in one sentence because we don't have time, but if Christian gets this seat, how would you tell him to stay encouraged even when that battle gets bloody and you have days where you just want to come back to Texas and not go back?
His circle will keep him grounded. And I know you said one sentence, but I'm gonna just add this other sentence. It is so important for you as members of CD 18, you have to continue to support him and encourage him. My district consistently calls, sends me notes, that I remember. I am always reminded of why I am there. I am not there for the people in DC. I am there for the people that sent me to DC. So please, whatever you do, keep your prayers coming, keep your notes of encouragement going. He has to know that you are watching and you support him when he is in the midst of the battle, because you can get really disillusioned when you are sitting there in the bubble.
That'll do. Extra sentences, I don't mind. Those are great. That was a challenge. All right, let's get closing remarks from you two. Christian, let's start with you. And any reminders that you want for the voters out there.
Well, I just want to, first of all, thank y'all so much for coming out today, and I want to thank Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett for coming out way from Dallas. Can y'all help me give her a round of applause, please? Uh-oh, they standing again. They promoting you to president. Ooh, Lord. And look, what I would say to y'all is don't let it defeat you. Right now, we see the ugliness that exists in our politics. We see how we have no ability to hold many of the folks in power accountable. We see we have a president running roughshod over our Constitution. We see many of our institutions being jeopardized. We have to keep our spirit and keep our fight. No one is going to get me to shy away from representing my community to the fullest of my ability. I don't care if you're the president. I don't care if you're homie trying to rush a stage. Like, none of that is about to make me fearful in fiercely fighting and advocating for the communities that I love. The person that you're voting for to descend to Congress is the same person I was 4 years ago when I first got elected, the same person I was before that. Someone who will never shy away from a battle, who will always try to do what's right by the 18th Congressional District, and who will just advocate for you in every way that I know how. The election is January 31st. But voting starts the week before that. It's going to be a low turnout election. So that means that every single vote that is cast has the ability to flip the election. So don't just go vote. Bring 7 friends and make them bring 7 friends and make them text you a picture with a little sticker on there showing that they voted. But you go vote first so you can tell if they sticker is counterfeit. Make sure you go vote first so you got the authentic thing. But look, what my parents taught me growing up is you can't just sit back and expect this experiment of democracy to work. Nobody's going to do it for you. There is no Thurgood Marshall coming to save you. There is nobody who's going to step in and make this America work the way that it needs to work if you're not doing your part. So stand on the things that you believe in, advocate for the things that you want to see in your community, ask the tough questions, support the important nonprofits, do that work, and the commitment you have from me is I will continue to fight for you each and every day. I'm so grateful to y'all for being here. Thank you.
Final thoughts from you, Congresswoman.
My final thoughts are that I want y'all to, there is no way for you to understand how busy I am. I want you to understand what it means for me to be here. I want you to understand that there were 16 people that were running in this race, and I knew a number of them. There was only one person that I was ever going to support from day one. I want y'all to know that the number of requests that we get for me to be all over the country, to help all over doing all things. I mean, I was in Michigan last week and I did 4 events on Saturday. I am here to somebody from Michigan, child. I am here to tell you that I sit here because I believe in Christian. I sit here, and listen, this won't be the last time y'all see me, because this is how important it is. And so my only ask is for you to take that with you when you talk to somebody else and you say, listen, Congresswoman Crockett does not represent Houston whatsoever. And it's all over the place. But she cares for the 18th enough. Listen, I served with Sheila and I served with Sylvester. I knew them. I loved both of them dearly. The day that Sylvester died, I saw him. I am here to tell you that I know them well enough and I saw their interactions with him. I know how they felt about him. So this is bigger than the fact that, yes, he appeared in front of me in committee and he somehow survived to tell the story. A lot of people don't. It's bigger than that. He was asked about legacy earlier. I can tell you that he will honor the legacy of the 18th Congressional District from the first one until the most recent one. And I think that that matters at a time in which we're talking about how they are trying to decimate our districts, and it is the most corrupt president ever in the history of the United States. And to think that the gentle lady from the 18th Congressional District went and got allegedly the most corrupt, at least at that time, out, and now they are trying to decimate it. I want them to feel what it looks like to come for the 18th. And I can tell you there's only one person that I trust to make them feel some regret for coming for the 18th. So when it comes time to people asking you why it matters, I am here to tell you that it is really life or death. It matters. It matters to have the right one. We are on tight margins, and you can't just assume that because you send a Democrat, and I'm not just like casting dispersions, because I can only tell you what I know this one will do. I can tell you that we're not always lockstep. The reason that we have the situation in the Senate with the 8 Democrats is because they was built a little different. We lost 6 Democrats on the House side for the same vote. I am here to tell you that I need someone that I know will always be on the right side of history. And so that is why I am begging you, because it's not just about whether or not the Democrats have the House or the Senate. It's about which Democrats we got, because some of them aren't ready. So I am begging and pleading with you to not only go and do your part, but go and encourage others. Tell them if they have a problem with the way that our country is going, that the power is in their hands. They want you to feel hopeless. They want you to feel powerless, but you are not. The power belongs to the people. If you never believed it before, you should have believed it when you saw No Kings. If you didn't believe it then, you should have believed it when you saw what happened on November 4th. I am here to tell you that even in the state of Texas, we have power. Regardless of what they tell you, there is one reason that they decided they need to gerrymander our state. It is because of our power. Do not cede your power. Christian said this is going to be a low voter turnout election. I rebuke that. I am here to tell you that it is you that is going to make the difference in your lives. Everybody should be at the polls. You should be so upset with the fact that you have been without representation for almost a year. And that was because your elected leader right here in Texas did not care about the people in the 18th. He specifically deprived you of your representation. So if anybody should show up for a special election, it is the people in Congressional District 18.
Let's hear it one more time from Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett for being here.
Thank you so much, Christian, for having me, allowing me to moderate this town hall. Thank you all for coming out and spending your Saturday morning with us. You are incredible. You are igniting change throughout your community. Christian will be available for photos. Don't bum rush him, but he will be available for photos in the lobby. If you are interested in volunteering, you can go to christianmenefee.com for more information. You can sign up there. Either way, don't forget to vote, all right? January 31st, you got the runoff. Don't forget to vote. Don't forget to bring friends. As you said, make sure you do that. And I will see you on Chat with Chelsea on Fox 26. Thank you again for being here. You all have a wonderful weekend and happy Thanksgiving.